Hey friends, tonight we drift into a dream of Tulip's quiet power in 1636. But before we continue, it helps our channel if you subscribe and share this serene journey with others who seek calm sleep. As the story unfolds, allow your breath to slow and your mind to soften, guiding you gently into sleep. You awaken in Haarlem, Netherlands, in the year 1636. The earliest light of dawn filters through heavy drapes, casting pale patterns on frost-edged window panes. Snow taps the glass with a soft, persistent rhythm, each flake alighting then melting as though hesitant to leave its delicate touch. The hearth's embers glow with a gentle rhythmic crackle, punctuated by tiny pops as sap within the peat releases its warmth. Each ember's soft hiss seems to echo the beat of your own heart, inviting you to match its steady cadence. The room around you is cozy with warmth. A peat fire crackles low in the hearth, its amber glow wobbling across wide, smoky beams overhead. Shadows dance on rough plastered walls, whispering of quiet nights and whispered confidences. The mantel above the fire holds a small iron pot. Inside, porridge simmers, its surface swirling golden threads of cream. Steam rises in lazy spirals, carrying the comforting scent of oats mingled with a hint of honey. A gentle hiss accompanies the lid's faint tremor, as if the porridge itself stirs in anticipation of your first spoonful. The air carries the gentle scent of burning wood and simmering porridge. A small earthen pot sits near the hearth, its contents releasing soothing steam that curls toward the rafters. With each breath, you taste a hint of nutmeg and cinnamon, luxury spices brought over on distant ships, now lingering in your bowl. A young servant clad in homespun wool that roughened his brown skin moves with quiet purpose. He ladles thick porridge into a carved wooden bowl, then sets it gently on a low table beside two slender beeswax tapers. The flame of each candle quivers as if savoring its own reflection. As he places the bowl, you notice the tiny crackle of freshly hewn wood beneath his boots, an intimate symphony of hearthside life. Against one wall, beneath a latticed window, rests a single tulip bulb tucked in straw and wrapped in oiled cloth. Its surface is smooth and veined, a pale promise of life waiting beneath winter's hush. The bulb's presence here feels almost magical, an ambassador from distant lands, carrying within its folds a symphony of petals yet unseen. Rumor holds that such a bulb might cost more than a skilled craftsman's earnings for an entire season. And in the hush of this room, you sense why. Hidden in this simple vessel lies the promise of color that winter cannot erase. You lean closer, feeling a faint warmth through the oiled cloth, as though the bulb itself pulses with an inner life. Beyond the window, the frozen canal stretches like a mirror of silver glass. Elm trees stand sentinel on either bank, their skeletal branches coated in frost, each twig catching the feeble light and glinting like scattered diamonds. A thin mist rises from the water's surface, drifting upward to meet the low-hanging clouds. The canal's surface is so smooth it holds the reflection of a lone swan drifting near a break in the ice, a fleeting apparition gliding through misty silence. The world outside feels suspended, a moment held between exhale and inhale, yet you can sense life stirring beneath the cold. A tug of ice, a faint murmuring of birds awakened too early. In the distance, the bell of St. Bavo's Cathedral tolls once, twice, marking the hour in solemn resonance. Rising from a simple straw mattress, You feel the cold of wide pine floorboards beneath your woolen stockings. Each breath you take billows into silver puffs that float toward the rafters. The servant lad glances your way, offering a small, polite nod before tending to a bundle of kindling at the hearth. As he strokes his flint and tinder, sparks leap like miniature fireflies before settling into the hearth's steady glow. You follow his lead, each step measured, careful, as though walking across a frozen stream. A woven blanket lies folded at the bed's edge, its wool thick and fragrant with lanolin, a gentle invitation should you choose to linger in its warm embrace. A gentle hush reigns, broken only by the crackle of embers and the rhythmic drip of melting ice from the window's sill. In that hush, you notice the scroll of parchment unfurled upon a simple wooden desk, a ledger of inked entries, each line a record of bulbs purchased, sums paid, names whispered. The curly script glows in the firelight, hinting at numbers that shimmer like alchemical formulas, sums that boggle the mind, sums that could purchase fields or feed families. You reach out to touch the parchment, its surface rough yet cool, the indentations of ink forming small ridges beneath your fingertip. You cross the room toward that desk, your heart slowing in time with every wobbling flame. The merchant who owns this home, clad in a thick fur-lined doublet, sits nearby, scratching quill across parchment as though composing a litany of hopes and dreams. His quill's nib glides over the page, releasing a faint click with every letter. He looks up, his breath hanging in the air, and offers you a gentle smile before dipping his quill again. Each dip of ink into the well feels like a heartbeat, a step closer to a promise that may bloom beyond winter's reach. His daughters kneel on a patchwork rug beside a low table, tracing inked outlines of tulip blooms on separate sheets of parchment. The rug's wool fibers poke gently at their knees as they lean forward. The soft scratch of quill on parchment is the only sound between their whispered breaths. Their laughter is nearly silent, soft breathings as they imagine daffodil-shaped petals and swirling hues of crimson and ivory. One cradles a small jar of watercolor beside her, mixing pigments of powdered lapis and ochre until the colors shimmer like gemstones beneath the candle's glow. The other deftly guides a quill to form sinuous curves, the ink pooling and drying in delicate lines. The daughter with dark hair exhales slowly as she captures the slender twist of a petal. "What if the flower opens at night?" she murmurs, voice trembling with wonder. Her sister's head tilts and she adds, "Then we would awaken to a bloom that glows like moonlight." Their words drift across the room like drifting snowflakes, slow, hushed, luminous. A tiny flicker of hope seems to shimmer in their wide eyes. Even their small hands tremble as though anticipating a miracle. Outside, the city of Haarlem stirs to life beneath a fragile pink sky. Bargemen trudge along icy quays, their breath rising as tiny clouds. Horses' hooves strike the cobbles in measured clops, echoing between shuttered houses as though seeking some reply. A cluster of geese hovers near a sliver of open water, their honks muffled by the whisper of falling snow. Smoke curls from narrow chimneys, blending with the haze until rooftops seem to hover like islands in a diaphanous sea. A distant gull cries, its call sharp against the hush, a reminder that the world beyond slumber begins to stir. Beyond these quiet streets lies a larger world of trade and travel. Ships from Amsterdam have docked overnight, delivering spices and silks from distant shores. The salty tang of brine still lingers in the air, accompanied by the musk of cedar and camphor camels that once languished beneath desert suns. Each returning ship carries more than cargo. It brings whispers of tulips strange to northern eyes, flowers whose petals swirl in patterns resembling shattered stained glass. Sailors speak of caravan routes snaking through desert dunes, of ornate gardens tucked behind oasis walls, and of markets so grand that men barter for petals as though they were gemstones. Within the grand salons of Amsterdam, gilded mirrors reflect gleaming wax candles set in wrought iron sconces. Silk tapestries drape walls, and the light flickers across polished marble floors. Courtiers clad in silk and velvet glide like shadows, their laughter as soft as drifting fog, their voices veiled in subtext and implication. Bows are exchanged with silent precision, and fanned fans conceal knowing smiles. But no sound of their revels reaches this humble parlor. Here, only hearth and hushed breath hold sway, cradling the bulb's pale promise in a gentle cocoon of stillness. You lean against the mantelpiece, allowing your gaze to drift upward, over carved brackets painted with floral motifs, across wooden beams darkened by seasons of soot and celebration. The lintel itself bears the scars of years of flame, each blackened ridge a silent testament to dinners long past, to celebrations and farewells shared under this very roof. A faint wisp of smoke from an old ceremony still lingers in a corner alcove, as though the memory of laughter and music remains etched into the wood. While life outside buzzes with merchants and nobles, here in this room, time collapses into a single moment. Leaning closer to the tulip bulb, you trace a finger along its ridges, feeling the cool hardness beneath the paper wrapping. You imagine the rays of a gentle sun coaxing it from dormancy, petals unfurling like delicate scrolls bearing messages of hope. You think of distant fields, rows of emerging shoots pushing through thawed earth, each leaf shimmering with dew under a newborn spring. Each droplet of early morning dew would sparkle like a tiny crystal, capturing the promise of a new day. And you recognize that this single bulb is a vessel of countless dreams, a dream of warmth against cold, of color against gray, of life against the hush of winter. In the quiet of that moment, your heartbeat slows, your thoughts drift to the rhythm of falling snow. Each tap against the glass grows softer. Each flicker of flame dims until only a gentle glow remains. You lift your bowl of porridge, savoring each spoonful as though tasting memory itself. The sweetness of barley, the warmth of cream, the hint of honey drizzled by a loving hand. As the porridge cools on your tongue, you feel a calm settling within, a gentle acceptance that even winter's hush holds the seed of spring. The moment stretches, as if inviting you to sink into its arms. Your eyelids grow heavy, and the hush around you feels like velvet folding inward. Even the merchant's quill seems to pause, just for a breath, holding a single icicle of possibility before resuming its quiet dance across the paper. The daughters drift into silence, their heads bowed over half-finished sketches, the whisper of quill on parchment, the last sound before sleep claims them too. And so, in that hush, you drift, weightless, buoyed by the bulb's silent promise, carried on the drift of winter snowflakes. The frozen canal outside lies untouched, a silent witness to your slumber. Inside, the hearth's embers glow with renewed warmth, their soft glow inviting dreams of petals and promise. The tulip bulb slumbers, poised between earth and sky, waiting for the gentle breath of spring. Act 2. Obsession in Bloom. The next morning, a hush of curiosity ripples through Haarlem. The frost has receded from the canal surface, leaving behind a gauzy veil of mist that drifts upward like spindrift from a distant sea. The water's surface mirrors the sky and the silhouettes of dormant willows, each reflection trembling with anticipation. The streets, once muffled in snow, reveal cobbles slick with early thaw, sending up faint echoes beneath each footstep. Horse-drawn carts trundle slowly along the quays, their wheels glancing off the stone with soft thuds. A fisherman in patched wool stands at the edge of the canal, his net hanging slack as he gazes toward the market stalls already bustling with life. In the courtyard of a modest merchant's home, a simple wooden cart carries crates of newly arrived tulip bulbs. Each crate is marked with wax seals bearing exotic emblems, crescent moons, curling vines, tokens of the faraway lands where these treasures first sprouted. The straw inside each crate crackles softly as onlookers lean in to examine the forms hidden within. Curious onlookers gather in hushed circles, breathing in the earthy scent of straw and soil. A bundle of cashmere shawls draped on a nearby stall flutters gently in the breeze, but few eyes linger on textiles when crates of bulbs await inspection. Merchants and artisans converge here, their breath misting the air as they lean forward to study each bulb's subtle variations. Smooth, plum-colored skin one day, streaked with silver white the next, as though the light itself kissed the surface. They murmur of broken tulips, those rare blossoms that bear jagged patterns of flame and dusk, like petals fractured by heavenly lightning. No one knows exactly why these markings appear, but tales spread quickly. Some say a benevolent fungus visited only a sacred few, leaving its artistic signature in night's silent hours. Others whisper of a curse, of envy visited upon those who dare covet such fragile beauty. One local rumor tells of a collector who kept his broken bulb under a velvet pillow, claiming it hummed in the darkness, singing lullabies that promised dreams of gold and roses. You wander among these collectors, heart fluttering in sync with tiny ripples of hope. A scarf-clad painter leans over a crate, eyes alight as she uncovers a bulb with veins of crimson shining beneath pale skin. Her brush tip, still moist with ink, hovers over paper, and the faint scent of wet pigment mingles with the earthiness beneath her cloak. She traces the lines with a brush dipped in black ink, capturing the bulb's silent promise on parchment. Each stroke a whisper of color waiting to emerge. Nearby, a wealthy silk merchant adjusts his cloak, nodding toward the painter, then toward a tall nobleman whose velvet coattails nearly brush the ground. The nobleman's fingers hover above a basket of bulbs as though choosing jewels. His gaze picks out the faintest marbling as though reading a secret language etched in petals. He inhales deeply, savoring the faint perfume of earth and rain. And somewhere in his gaze flickers a hunger for a flower that defies this chill. In taverns near the docks, conversations bubble over wooden benches scarred by years of tankards and tales. Smoke hangs heavy in the rafters, mingling with the scent of spilled ale, roasted meats, and a faint hint of saffron from yesterday's soup. A pickpocket with quick fingers listens intently as two traders discuss a bulb that fetched 300 guilders, an entire year's earnings buried in a single fragile orb. He balances on the edge of his bench, catching every hushed syllable. A tavern wench spills a few drops of spiced wine into a wooden bowl and glances at the hushed fellows huddled nearby. Her eyes flicker when she hears mention of hemp harvested and land mortgaged, of dowries promised. She reaches for a scrap of paper, jotting down names in a script bold and steady, notes to share with more attentive ears. Along narrow alleys, children dart after a stray dog, their footfalls echoing against bricks as they laugh. They chase scraps of straw that drift from the wagons, unaware that grown men and women hedge bets on which tulip will blaze brightest come May. Their giggles carry like bright ribbons through the hush, momentarily lifting the heaviness. A baker stops mid-stir as he hears the rising hum of voices praising a bulb nicknamed the Flaming Phoenix. He feels the warmth of his hearth beneath his woolen coat fade in that moment, as though the promise of pie and bread is overshadowed by petals he has never seen. He sets the dough aside, letting his apprentice knead in his stead, fascinated by the notion that a flower, ephemeral and delicate, could command wider size than the smell of freshly baked loaves. On a frosty afternoon, you stand before a simple stall draped with velvet. A middle-aged merchant with silver-streaked hair tilts his head, examining a bulb with marbled petals that seem to shimmer even in shadow. His fingers brush away a wisp of straw, revealing a mottled pattern that resembles stained glass fractured by sunlight. "This is the rarest of all," he murmurs to a customer dressed in fine cloth, voice hushed as though uttering a secret prayer. "They call it the Semper Augustus, petals like crimson fire divided by the pale whisper of dawn." He cups the bulb gently, as though it might vanish if handled too roughly. The merchant's thumb brushes a tiny root remnant, and he recalls the day he uncovered the bulb on a distant shore, its shell still warm beneath his palm. The customer's eyes widen, and he reaches for a small pouch of gold coins, enough to buy a modest cottage near the canals. That evening, within candlelit salons of Amsterdam's grand estates, strains of lute music drift through gilded corridors. The candles burn low in crystal sconces, and their flickering light transforms the walls into living tapestries. Silk-clad aristocrats gather in hushed clusters, each clutching a small card inscribed with the name of a tulip variety: Victory, De Witt's Mantle, Rose Gris. Their voices form a gentle hum as they clink crystal goblets, tasting spiced wine that warms the chest with flavors of clove and honey. Perfumed servants move silently between them, offering trays of roasted almonds and succulent olives, their silver platters reflecting pale lamplight. A young countess, her hair pinned high with polished tortoiseshell combs, holds a slim card before her. Her violet eyes glimmer as she reads the words, "Viceroy's Pride," a tulip said to bloom like a jewel at dusk. Her fingertips tremble as they brush the parchment's edge. She leans toward a poet in powdered velvet, her voice a soft murmur. "Imagine it gracing my parlor table, petals unfurling like silk spun from moonbeams." The poet's gaze lingers upon her as he replies, "Such beauty could outshine the stars themselves." Behind them, a painting hangs, an aged seascape in which a lone ship rides calm waters, petals drifting across the marbled frame, as though the sea itself once carried bulbs to distant ports. And so, in the hush of that moment, the dream of a bloom transcends space and place, floating on the gentle sigh of possibility. All around, portraits on paneled walls bear witness to this obsession. Ancestors in ruffs and velvet robes gaze from gilded frames, their eyes reflecting lifetimes long past. Each face seems to observe the living scramble for a flower they could only have known in forgetting dreams. The brushstrokes capture a candlelit world frozen in time, eyebrows arched, lips parted in silent counsel. They seem to watch, unblinking, as the present world trembles beneath the promise of petals. And yet, the hush remains gentle, soothing as a lullaby. Because here, in this world of hushed breaths and flickering lights, obsession is but a quiet meditation on beauty's fleeting reign. The crackle of embers in distant hearths murmurs a silent reminder. No matter how fervent the craving, beauty's bloom is as ephemeral as a whispered secret. Act 3. The Market Awakens. In the days that follow, the rumble of commerce gathers like a gathering storm. The dawn chorus of birds twitters above narrow roofs, their song mingling with the distant clang of blacksmiths hammering iron. Each clang reverberates like a heartbeat through the still morning air. Yet in the heart of Haarlem's market square, a new rhythm emerges. One of hushed anticipation punctuated by the hush of seal wax and parchment sliding across polished oak. At a back room in a modest tavern, traders assemble around a scarred table. A single candle set in wrought iron illuminates parchments cluttered with lines of ink, contracts promising bulbs that will emerge from the earth in weeks to come. The candle's flame struggles against a faint draft that skims through a crevice in the shutters, casting dancing shadows across ink-splotched arms and quills. The air is thick with tobacco smoke and the faint aroma of spilled ale, mingling with the hint of damp earth that clings to the trader's boots. Each trader moves with measured care, sliding quills between fingers like ritual objects, dipping them in ink with a delicate flourish, then pressing them to pale parchment. The quill's nib releases a soft sigh as it scrapes against the textured surface, leaving ink strokes that form delicate promises. 12 florins now, murmurs a merchant with a nervous tremor, for delivery of that saint. Victor's flame come March. His voice is barely above a whisper, yet it carries the weight of earnest hope. He places his folded note on the table, heart pounding as though it might shatter if heard. A slender nobleman in velvet coattails leans forward, eyes gleaming behind a cascade of powdered curls. The candlelight catches a single teardrop at the corner of his eye, an unspoken testament to both ambition and dread. 15 florins, he counters, voice hushed as though the very mention of higher sums might break the fragile hush. His words hang in the air, vibrating like a single drop of water trembling on a leaf's tip. Their exchange unfolds like a quiet dance, one of subtle nods and measured breaths. The parchment demands only ink and wax, yet it binds futures as tightly as chains. Each lash of quill across parchment feels akin to casting a spell, the promise of a bulb that will unfurl its petals in a season not yet born. The wax seals click softly as they are pressed onto folded contracts, each seal's crest, a tiny tulip leaf, molding into the warm wax. Outside, the market's pulse quickens. Bellows of gossip echo between stalls piled high with fish, cheese, and spices. Each stallholder calls out soft invitations. Fresh herring for a penny. Cheddar pressed this morning. Yet few voices drown above the undertone of tulip fever. A child threading through the crowd giggles as she follows a stray cat, its fur a mottled tapestry of gray and white. The cat darts underfoot, weaving between wagon wheels, oblivious to the fever swirling above. A painter stands near a stack of barrels, capturing the scene in soft strokes of ochre and sienna. Fishermen hauling nets, a mother hushing her babe wrapped in swaddling cloth, and beyond them, a line of wagons brimming with crates of bulbs. The painter's canvas, set upon a wooden easel, bears the outlines of peeling paint and ink splatters from days past. With each brushstroke, he hints at the hum of human energy swelling like a gathering tide. A baker's apprentice emerges from a shop, the warm scent of fresh loaves trailing behind him. He pauses, eyes fixed on a crate marked with wax seals bearing a crescent moon crest. His stomach rumbles, recalling the hot crust of bread resting on his lips just moments ago. A crowd forms around the crate, whispering quiet prayers of hope. He feels the tug of desire. Would he trade his wooden paddle and steel oven for a single bulb that might bloom like a sunset? His breath catches as a hooded trader removes the straw covering to reveal a Semper Augustus, petals marbled with fire and snow. The apprentice's fingers tighten on his paddle's handle, the wood's rough grain pressing into his palm as though urging him to choose. A hush falls across the crowd, as though the air itself bends to watch. The apprentice's heart thrums. He imagines the dough in his hands skyrocketing to donuts of gold, fragrant as honeyed moonlight. He feels a weight shift in his chest, an invisible falcon taking flight on a current of possibility. A single bead of sweat trickles down his temple, cold against his warm skin. Elsewhere, in a dimly lit study above a bookshop, a scholar pores over treatises on horticulture, tracing Latin incantations that promise to coax bulbs into perfect blooms. His quill slides across a page as he copies diagrams of root structures, finger pressing against the crisp parchment where a tiny splash of ink dots a margin. He shifts his candle closer, watching the flame's reflection dance across glass bottles filled with powdered ingredients, ashes, bone meal, and crushed eggshell. He dreams of bulbs that stand erect like royal banners, petals unfurling in a silent fan. Each stroke of ink seems to make the dream more tangible, as though the very words themselves could sculpt petals out of darkness. By late afternoon, a caravan of carriages trundles through the city's gates, laden with crates of tulip bulbs bound for Amsterdam. Each carriage creaks beneath its burden, wheels sending tremors into the thawing earth. A jangle of harness metal punctuates each jolt, and horses snort into the crisp air. Up ahead, a distant chime rings through the air. An auction is about to begin. In a grand hall set just beyond the city's heart, tall windows draped in heavy velvet hang like silent watchers of dawn. The drapes sway in a gentle breeze that slips through a cracked transom, stirring the hush within. Candles set in ornate holders flicker like captive starlight, their light reflected in polished marble floors. The air here smells of beeswax, old stone, and the faintest musk of tulip bud. A hush falls as a bell's toll echoes through the rafters, its sound rippling across rows of benches where bidders gather like silent sentinels. A single crate stands at the center, draped in crimson velvet. A humble servant uncovers it with slow, ceremonial reverence, revealing 10 bulbs, each cradled in its own nest of straw, each labeled with a delicate tag: Semper Augustus, Viceroy's Pride, Rose Gris. The straw crackles faintly as the cloth pulls away, and a hush like silk sweeps through the crowd, as if the entire room inhales in unison. Noblemen in doublets of midnight blue step forward, their boots clicking against marble. Each footfall echoes like a drumbeat heralding something sacred. A poet in saffron robes raises a folded note, and a fur-lined magistrate raises a stack of florins, the coins whispering as they shift against one another in a leather pouch. Each bid drips into the hush like a raindrop falling onto glass, vibrating in concentric ripples. The highest bid for a single bulb climbs to staggering heights, camping grounds for a caravan, dowries for daughters, the weight of winter's storehouses. But still, each hush is answered by a breath and a higher whisper. When the final gavel falls, echoing like a tolling bell, the hush fractures into a hum of satisfaction and quiet envy. One bidder lifts a single bulb like a chalice, turning it gently beneath candlelight. Its pale petals, still hidden beneath straw, promise a blaze of color yet unborn, a story that will unfurl in quiet moments when dawn's first light softens the earth. The bidder's gloved hand trembles as he cradles it, the bulb's warmth pressing through his silk-lined glove. Throughout Haarlem and beyond, news of this auction trickles like a gentle tide, reaching kitchens and libraries, taverns and courtrooms. In every hearth lit by a trembling flame, hearts pound with hopes that rise higher than winter's frost. The hush is gone, replaced by the quickening of breath, the brush of words carried on a warm current of desire. Yet even as the market soars, a faint murmur of caution drifts on the edges, a whisper that reminds some that beauty, once plucked too early, can wither before its promise blooms. But that whisper is soft and fleeting, drowned by the clamor of coins, by the hush of contracts, by the ever-rising tide of longing. Act 4, Madness in Full Bloom. As spring tiptoes closer, the hush transforms into a fevered murmur. The first crocuses have emerged from thawed earth, sending up tiny heralds of color. Their violet petals glisten with dew droplets that catch the light like spun glass. In homes and shops, more bulbs appear, packed carefully in straw, each bearing a label that resembles a sheath for treasure. Walls once hung with simple tapestries now flaunt sketches and paintings of tulip petals, studies in crimson and lilac, each brushstroke capturing the fervor of expectation. In a townhouse warmed by roaring hearths, a widow named Marika hovers above her walnut desk, tracing a contract that will surrender her family's cottage in exchange for a single bulb known as the black parrot. Its petals are said to unfurl like raven feathers at dusk. She holds the quill in sweat-damp fingers, the final stroke of ink pounding in her veins. The ledger beneath her quill breathes under the weight of ink, its parchment cracking at the spine like an old book opening for one last story. She tries to remember her husband's laughter, echoing around this very room, before setting quill to parchment and sealing her fate with cracked wax. A half-empty cup of tea sits beside her, its steam long since evaporated, leaving only a ring of stained china as a mute testament to her indecision. Across town, a baker named Peter wipes flour from his mahogany doorframe. He watches the last glow of his ovens fade as he pushes them cold against the tiled floor. The hearth's bricks still radiate a faint warmth, a lingering echo of loaves past. His shop, once alive with the smell of yeast and honey, stands empty as he uses its deeds to secure 5 bulbs. He marvels at each one, their surfaces bruised with promise as though they bleed silent fires. He feels the hum of possibility, an electric current in the air, daring him to dream bigger than he ever has before. He closes his eyes and breathes in one last whiff of yeast before relinquishing it all. In the harbor under moonlight, a sailor named Jan unloads barrels of exotic spices, his breath barely stirring the mist. The scent of clove and cardamom drifts around him, conjuring memories of distant ports and daring voyages. Word has reached him that one bulb of Admiral's Pride can buy a state-of-the-art vessel or fund a year's worth of voyages. He exchanges his final payslip for that very bulb, imagining it blossoming like a flag in the night breeze. Each petal becomes a sail, each streak of color a map to lands he has yet to see. He smiles at the spice barrels, their rich perfumes a fleeting symphony compared to the silent promise radiating from the brittle bulb. By midday, the auction halls in Amsterdam resemble theaters set for a grand performance. Velvet drapes frame windows that glow with sunlight, casting golden patterns on marble floors. The room is alive with hushed frenzy. Men in clipped coats adjust their collars, women in layered gowns clutch velvet pouches, each containing a fortune of florins. Each step they take across the marble sends a soft echo through the hall. A hush falls only when the central stage is revealed, a single pedestal bearing a crate of 20 bulbs, each cradled in straw dyed scarlet. This crimson straw crackles faintly as dust drifts from its fibers. A hush as soft as down descends over the crowd. Then, one heartbeat, the bidding begins. Words flow in measured tones. 200, 300, 400. Each higher bid a quiet gasp of wonder and determination. The hammers ring against the dais, each toll echoing like a heartbeat. The raising of hands is as deliberate as a woven tapestry, unraveling one thread at a time. The air shivers with anticipation, as though the very walls hold their breath. From behind velvet curtains, a child peers out at the spectacle, petals yet unborn, promises yet untold. He feels the hushed tide of money swirling like a whirlpool around him, pulling him closer to its depths. The polished floor beneath his feet vibrates as though echoing the silent storm. Nearby, a lady in a dress of ivory silk trembles with nervous delight as she sets her final bid, a sum that could feed an entire hamlet for a season. She stands with sudden vertigo, her heart a hummingbird's wing beat. The highest price for a single bulb ascends to heights unimaginable. The lands of a village, the dowry of a noble's daughter, the life savings of a poor farmer. Yet each hush is still answered by breath, by the soft sliding of coins, by the hush of ink as it seals futures. When the final gavel falls, the hush cracks into a quiet chorus of sighs and half-lidded smiles. Marika's contract is sealed, Peter's shop is gone, Jan's vessel floats in memory. But even as petals wait beneath frost-shattered soil, a rippling undercurrent stirs. Rumors of counterfeit bulbs, whispers that some have pledged lands they do not own, or coins they do not hold. Traders glance nervously at one another, each breath a prayer that the dawn will bring true blooms rather than shadows. The traders' eyes flicker toward one another as the faint glow of dawn peeks through narrow windows, catching their pale faces in sudden vulnerability. And yet the hush remains, fragile, urgent, like the thinnest strand of a spider's web, ready to tremble with the slightest weight. That evening, in taverns aglow with lantern light, patrons clink tankards and murmur of futures sealed in secrecy. The scent of pine wood smoke and roasted game drifts through the air, mingling with the soft perfume of hyacinth. A flicker of candlelight reveals glistening tears in the merchant's eyes as he holds a contract folded so many times that the creases form the map of his hopes. Each time he unfolds it, a new fold slips, releasing a creak that seems impossibly loud in the hush. The whispers grow louder outside, an unsettled hush that fans the flames of desire. A child catches a fallen petal from a wilted daffodil and wonders if it might carry some of the tulip's magic. He presses it to his lips, tasting nothing but morning dew, yet smiles with reverence as though the petals sang. A scholar in a high-backed chair flips through pages of botanical texts, seeking omens that foretold this fevered bloom. A single page flutters free, landing at his feet, a diagram of root networks spreading like golden threads beneath dark soil. He bends to retrieve it, entranced by its promise. And above all, the hush persists, like a pulse that quickens toward an inevitable crescendo, lingering in every breath of night air, every flicker of candle flame. Act 5. The collapse begins. One quiet morning, the hush falters. The thawed canal reflects a pale sky, but the streets are unusually silent. The usual morning clatter of carts is replaced by a weighty stillness. Where once footfalls had clacked upon cobbles like gentle percussion, now the hush of absence lingers, empty spaces where once traders scurried. A single oil lamp flickers in a distant window, its glow faint against the rising sun. The halls that had thrummed with bidding lie quiet, windows shuttered against the chill, their velvet drapes drawn like closed eyelids. In a grand auction house, a lone caretaker dims lanterns and stacks empty crates for storage. The pedestal that had held prized bulbs stands bare, its velvet cloth folded away. Cobwebs dust its edges, and a single feather drifts from a high beam, settling on the cold marble like a fallen thought. A signboard, once emblazoned with auction dates and promises, hangs crooked and faded, its cheerful lettering dulled by neglect. A single echo lingers as the caretaker's footsteps recede, a hollow sound as though the walls exhale. Down the street, a messenger rides slowly, breath steaming in the crisp air. He carries sealed letters, ledgers of debt, notices of default, pleas for mercy. Each scroll is tied with a frayed ribbon, its wax seals chipped and cold. The horses' hooves strike muted echoes against the damp earth as they approach a narrow doorway where a widow once gazed at a single Semper Augustus. Now, her home is dark, its windows shuttered. A battered chest sits in the corner, its lock broken by hands desperate for any salvageable coin. She stands in the hollow attic, looking at a bulb with petals opened too long ago, now shriveled and brown, each petal curled and brittle like autumn leaves, the faint scent of decay lingering in the air. In the marketplace, a modest crowd gathers around a battered stall where bulbs lie rotting, petals fallen, stems slack. A faint buzz of flies circles the wilted blooms, their wings tapping like soft percussion against silent despair. A faded poster flaps in the breeze, advertising a salvage auction. Tulip bulbs at bargain prices, land, coin, and belongings accepted. Nearby, a cobbler fingers a contract for a bulb that never yielded a bloom. His worn apron is stained with old leather scraps and ink smudges. A single tear glints on his cheek beneath a sunless sky as he picks up a half-finished shoe from a workbench. A shoe he never had hoped to complete. He sets it aside with a sigh, the leather's creased fold catching the pale light. A baker wanders past, pushing a wicker basket of stale bread. Each crumb cracks beneath his boots, echoing emptiness. His shop stands empty, the ovens cold, the counter bare. He avoids eye contact with neighbors, who greet him with gentle nods and lowered heads. The crates of bulbs he once prized now lie uprooted in a muddy ditch, their petals scattered like brittle tears across the ground. A stray dog sniffs at them before trotting away. He pauses to trace breadcrumbs with a gloved finger, wondering if the world might return to warmth if only he could forget. The rough texture of the crust beneath his fingertip reminds him of simpler days. In a desolate tavern near the quay, a handful of gamblers hunch over tables. The only hush here is the low clink of faded coins gambled away in moments of desperation. The board used for dice games bears tiny gouges from days of long-forgotten laughter. A grizzled fisherman sets down a chipped tankard, eyes distant. He recalls the fervor that once gripped the city, nets cast not for fish, but for petals that promised fortunes. Now, his nets lie idle in a corner, tangled and dust-covered. The fish in his memory taste of salt and honest labor, far from the bitter tang of regret. The city's halls of power feel the hush too. A magistrate's office once heavy with petitions now echoes with a solitary clerk's footstep. The ledger lies open on a desk, columns of unpaid loans, names erased by time. A single quill rests in its inkpot, dried to brittle refuse. Outside, a carriage bearing a once prominent noble rattles along cobbles as the driver navigates a narrower route, his master's gilded dreams now lost to the hush. The ornate crests on the carriage's doors have chipped lacquer, and the driver's coat hangs loose on his thin frame. On the outskirts, where noble estates once sprawled, a field of wildflowers stands untended. A lone gardener kneels among clumps of tulips that bloom without care. Their petals, once symbols of status, now drift like paper kites, the vibrant reds and whites dulled by neglect. Each tulip stands straggling and wild, its stem bowed like a weary traveler. The gardener plucks a single blossom, cradles it gently, then tosses it aside. He wipes his sleeve on earth-stained linen, rises, and walks away as the breeze carries the flower across an empty field. In the twilight hush, a wandering minstrel strums a lute beneath a weathered oak. His melody is soft and slow, a lament for petals and fortunes lost. Each chord hums with a quiet sorrow that drifts across rooftops like drifting sand. His audience is an empty bench and a single owl perched on a low branch, its head tilted as though listening for a last whisper of promise. Yet even in this hush, the city breathes. A mother lulls her infant to sleep with a simple lullaby, her voice a soft ripple in the hush. In a dimly lit room, two lovers share a quiet embrace, their hearts steady as the world resets. The canal's water flows beneath a thin ice sheen reclaimed by spring, carrying away whispers of what once was, petals and promises floating toward an uncertain horizon. Outside the city, fields lie ready for planting, rows of tilled earth waiting for seeds of mustard and barley. Each furrow is straight and hopeful, cut by the gardener's plow under a forgiving sky. A gardener sows bulbs of common daffodils, their golden heads nodding in gratitude with every seed dropped. He hums a simple tune, the same lullaby that once soothed the widow's child. The Tulip Mania has faded, leaving behind lessons wrapped in quiet humility as the hush of earth welcomes new growth. Thank you for joining this final moment of stillness where the echoes of a dream gently fade into memory. May your mind find rest in the knowledge that beauty blooms anew, even after the deepest hush. If you enjoyed this journey, please consider subscribing and sharing to help bring more restful tales to those who seek calm sleep. Sweet dreams and good night.